with his battle with his health issues while also trying to write a deep emotional song. And then even shooting the music video for that one was quite challenging and hard. Um, the weekend that we shot the music video for Deep, which will be coming out later, and Celebrate, my dad was in the hospital in Nashville, and I slept on a hospital floor, for a couple hours. Maybe I got 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then got up and went and shot the music video. We signed with a record label out of Los Angeles, California, a record label called Cleopatra Records, which was super cool. Tom Kiefer from Cinderella was on that label, and a bunch of other greats.
It's Tony Gonzalez from Made in Metal, and today we are talking to Steve Jewell, the bass player in Stone Cherry. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you, Tony?
Perfect. We are here because you are going to release a new EP called Celebrate.
That's right. March 6th. We're very excited.
Yes, Celebrate comes after an intense album as Screaming at the Sky. When the band felt the need to make this EP, and why now?
In this digital driven day and age that we live in, people's attention spans is shorter and shorter than ever before. And you put out a new record and it seems like a month later people are like, okay, great, when you putting out new music? It's like, wait a minute, love this, listen to this a little bit longer. But decided to do an EP this go around, to get music out quicker and try something new and something different. We've never really put out an EP outside of, like a record store day release, which we did last year, or the Back to Blues EPs, if you will. But something with like original music, I guess you could say. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with it, and celebrates the current single out right now. It's doing great. Everybody seems to really enjoy it, so we're super excited for everyone to get the EP on March 6th.
When I read Celebrate, I ask myself, what exactly do you want to celebrate? Maybe the band's resilience, a personal milestone, staying alive, something, or maybe something more intimate that isn't apparent on the first listen. What do you think?
Yeah, all those are great points. I think music is and always has been subjective. You know, um, it can mean something completely different to one person as opposed to the artist who wrote it, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about music. Whenever you write music and then you get feedback from fans about what that song means to them or maybe their interpretation of it, and you're like, wow, I never really thought about it like that. So, something like the title Celebrate in that song specifically could be anything. It could be just being thankful and grateful that you woke up another day because we're never promised another day for sure. Or, for us, we're just thankful and grateful that, we get to play music another day and write and record music, another year for another album cycle. So it's always great, writing and putting out positive and uplifting music for people for sure.
Hi, I'm Tony Gonzalez, and this is Made in Metal. If you are passionate about rock and metal, this channel is your home. Here we celebrate the musicians, songwriters, and producers who have made history. We have already interviewed some incredible artists, and with your subscription, we can go even farther. Your support gives us visibility, open doors, and allow us to keep creating powerful, authentic content. Subscribe, share, and be part of this metal loving community. Thanks for being here, and let the good rock keep rolling. In this recording, did you record all together in a studio as usual or separate?
All together in the studio. We've pretty much write how the band's normally wrote over the years. Somebody may have a vocal part or a riff or something at sound check, before a show, and then we tour so much throughout the years, so it works out that we'll demo songs out, if you will, on the back of the tour bus, and then this EP, we actually slated some time off to get together here at home to kind of go over the songs and get them ready before we went into the studio. And then, of course, all four of us went into the studio together and recorded everything. So it was a lot of fun.
Now that you mentioned demo songs, were there any tracks on Celebrate that changed radically from the first demo to the final version?
Um, yeah, certain changes. It's kind of funny because when you go back and you listen to like a rough demo version on your cell phone or your computer, and then you hear the final version that comes out, you always hear like little subtle differences and changes. So it's always cool to see how a song evolves. And just because you record a song and you release it doesn't mean it still doesn't evolve, sorry, over the years, which, bands and artists has been doing that for decades now. You can go back to it doesn't matter if it's Along the Watchtower, Jimi Hendrix's version, or a Led Zeppelin song. You watch footage over the years after it's been released, and there's just something about playing live music and feeding off the crowd's energy, and how sometimes that may dictate how you may play that song live. So that's one of the beautiful things about writing music and songs is that I think they're always ever evolving.
And in your personal case, did you change any bass line and groove for any song since the demo version to the official version?
Yeah, I think it naturally does that. Because once you knock out, the first demo, if you will, you kind of live with it for a while and you listen and you kind of maybe hear certain things. And then when you go into the studio to actually record the song, I think the parts always come out, a little bit more different than after you've had some time to kind of live with it and listen to it a lot and kind of solidify some things. So yeah.
There is a version of Don't You Forget About Me with Tyler Connolly. And my question is, what was the most difficult aspect of reinterpreting it from a bass perspective without losing the soul of the original?
Yeah, we always, I feel like, try to pay homage to the original when you do a cover, but at the same time, you want to try to like make it your own. So it was essentially that, and I think for bass, the formula that I always abide by, if you will, is just stay out of the way and try to complement, what's there harmonically and sonically. So.
And Steve, was there any track on the EP where you start from the bass and imagine that this bass line is going to be the starting point of the song?
It's a great question. Maybe not necessarily. Sometimes, it may just kind of pan out that way, live and in the moment, whenever we're in the studio, like I said, and we've mentioned many times in previous, interviews that we all write together. So, you know, our drummer, John Fred, he may have a cool idea for a bass part or a vocal harmony part, or Ben or Chris may have a cool idea for a drum groove. So a lot of us just kind of like, just kind of off the cuff and in the moment when we're in the studio, and it's usually kind of how it shakes out.
Now that you mention Fred, on which track from Celebrate do you think your bass has the most interesting dialogue with John's Fred drums?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Um, maybe you ask me tomorrow, my answer may change, right? It's like picking your favorite band or favorite song. You ask me tomorrow, it may change. I guess one of the first ones that comes to mind is maybe the first single that we released, Neon Eyes. It's got a really cool stripped back verse section. And of course there's more energy in the beginning and in the choruses and stuff. But he's such a fun drummer to play off of. And because as a bassist, you're essentially doing two things. You're trying to sync up with the drums on the rhythm side of things, but you're also trying to sync up and stay out of the way melodically to complement, the vocals and the guitars. So, yeah, Neon Eyes, that was a lot of fun, to sync up with John Fred on and complement each other for sure.
Now that we continue with the links, because when you are in the studio, who usually push you the most to go out of your comfort zone? Chris, Ben, John Fred, the producer, or are you the most demanding of your own parts?
Yeah, I personally hold myself to a very high standard. I always want to try to give everything my best and do my best. And, even if sometimes somebody may like say, hey man, that take was good enough, I'm always like, but I think I got one more in me. I think I can do it a little bit better. So, but we all, push each other, in a healthy manner because we all want to try to make the best recordings that we can and give the best takes in hopes to recording, the best songs that we can and serve the song as much as possible. So, we all do a great job of pushing each other and helping each other out in the studio for sure.
And when you prepare the cover of the song that we mentioned previously, so you approach this song most from the emotional part of the song or more from the technical part of the song. Do you understand?
I would say both. And I say that because some of my favorite bands and artists do both. Like me personally, I love good songwriting and good musicianship. So that's why I've always really loved, bands like Van Halen or Cream or even, bands like Creed or Alter Bridge. I'm a big fan of the band Mammoth, Wolfgang. Those guys are phenomenal. So, I love a good blend of both.
And was there ever a moment during the recording of Celebrate where you say, this is too clean, we need to dirty it up a bit so it sounds like a real band?
I don't know if we had any moments necessarily per se like that. We're very much a live band. What you see is what you get, what you hear is what you get. We just go in and just try to keep the energy up. So, whatever the energy is feeling, whatever the vibe is for that song as we're tracking it, that's what we do. And we try not to, second guess stuff too much because you'll be victim of analysis paralysis real quick if you're not careful.
But when you are playing live in concert, that I have seen the band more than once, so I think that you prefer to sound rawer, more fatter. So how did you make this?
Yeah, I think that's one of the special things about bands in general, and why I've always gravitated towards bands. Some of my favorite music is bands. Some of my favorite songs are from bands, if you will, because there's just that, aspect of labor of love, if you will. A collective group of people coming together at once, with an intention of trying to put on a great show or write a great song. So. And that's very much, what Blackstone Cherry's about. We all try to come together as one. It's not about one individual or anything, and try to put on, a great show, or a great recording in the studio. So.
Was there a track on this EP that was the most difficult to nail in the studio? And was there another who was maybe together and finished almost on the first take?
I would probably have to say the song Deep. That's going to be on the EP, not because musically it was hard to play. It's a ballad, if you will, on the song, probably because of the emotions behind it. It's a very special song to all of us. Especially for our guitarist Ben Wells. Sharing some of his personal struggles that him and his wife has been through battling infertility. Tility. I'll get it right in a minute. And so being very vulnerable with that, and we can't wait for the music video for that to come out. We think it's special and it's going to connect with a lot of people. For me, it was very emotional because in the middle of working on that song, my dad started battling some health issues. And it was very challenging for me trying to be there for my dad and help him with his battle with his health issues while also trying to write a deep emotional song. And then even shooting the music video for that one was quite challenging and hard. Um, the weekend that we shot the music video for Deep, which will be coming out later, and Celebrate, my dad was in the hospital in Nashville, and I slept on a hospital floor, for a couple hours. Maybe I got 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then got up and went and shot the music video for Celebrate, and then at the end of Deep is when I got a call that my dad was in the hospital. So just a lot of emotions around that song, and sometimes the musicality is not the hard part. Sometimes it's like battling with the vulnerability of putting your heart and soul into a song in hopes that you come out with a great song, but you also hope that it's delivered great and people connect with it as well.
I have seen the background, and my question is, are you a bass collector?
I have way more guitars than I have bass guitars for sure. So I've actually never played the bass guitar for any band before until I joined Blackstone Cherry. I'm primarily a guitarist and played guitars my whole life and drums as well. But honestly, at this point, I don't really identify, I don't think, with one specific instrument. I'm just a musician and an artist. But yeah, I've got a drum set that I got when I was 10 years old. So I love drums. I love collecting guitars, bass guitars, different amplifiers, different like obscure instruments. I've got a cigar box guitar, which a lot of blues artists and stuff have used over the years. So I love all instruments.
You are the bass player because you were the last to get in the band.
There you go. I guess that's one way of putting it.
Yes.
That's
And
what they needed.
and did you record this EP with only one bass or did you use more than once?
Just one bass, pretty much that green bass there behind me. It's a Fender Precision bass, and I was very fortunate that a great bass player in Glasgow, Kentucky, where I live at, by the name of Dean Smith. He actually plays in this band called Rufus Huff, one of my favorite local bands from around here, and he was a bassist in a band called Super Fuzz for a while in the early '90s, which was a huge influence on Blackstone Cherry when all of us were kids and starting out. He had an old Ampeg SVT head. I think it was maybe in early '70s. And I used that and my 810 Ampeg cab that I use on the road and that bass.
Now that it's clear that you play only one bass, my question is, did you work with a specific alternative tuning for this EP?
Yeah, primarily a lot of Blackstone Cherry's music is like a half step dropped or a full step drop. So yeah, that's mainly I think the two tunings that we used on the EP.
Before joining Blackstone Cherry, you already had your own journey. What was the key band or project that shaped you as a musician?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So for about almost a decade, I was in a band called Otis. based right out of here, the same town. And over the years, we would open up shows for Blackstone Cherry in the States, and had the privilege of opening for the guys on a couple shows in the UK, and that was a lot of fun. But primarily, I always played guitar in that band, and it was great, man. It was a lot of fun. Those guys are the first professional band that I was in, and got to get my chops, if you will, with this music industry from touring and recording music. We signed with a record label out of Los Angeles, California, a record label called Cleopatra Records, which was super cool. Tom Kiefer from Cinderella was on that label, and a bunch of other greats. And yeah, man, it was great. First group of guys, like I said, I got to experience touring with and writing music with, and sleeping in a van, being broke and hungry and not making any money, that kind of stuff. So, doing that stuff, that grind is always special memories. They were to me, and definitely helps shape you into the type of person that you are. And doing that for years, definitely gives you a greater sense of appreciation for everything, that I get to do now. So I've never been a guy. I don't give a shit about playing exclusively, big shows. I love it and I'm grateful for it. But, I love playing small shows as well. Because it helps you just go back to the well again, and gives you a lot of respect and gratitude for what you get to do. So, and for everyone who plays music on all levels, so if you're a musician, you're an artist of any genre, and you play arenas and stadiums, my hat's off to you. A lot of people don't understand the work and the grind that goes in to get to that level, and then to be able to sustain that. Like Blackstone Cherry has been playing arenas in the UK for about a decade now, so there's something to be said for that. And artists, bands all across the world in different genres that bust their ass every day, every weekend, playing coffee shops or small clubs. I have so much tremendous respect for those people. So, there's a blessing to get to do all of it. And I'm very blessed and grateful for, my journey and all those years of being broke and sleeping in a van and all the adversities and all the times people told you no, that you weren't good enough, or all the shows that you played for 3 or 4 hours for basically five people or maybe nobody. It just, whenever you get to do stuff, like maybe playing a Hellfest in France, or Wembley Arena, or Royal Albert Hall, it gives you twice as much gratitude, for being there and getting to do it.
Are there any stories from your early bands that still reminds you why you made music?
That's a great question, man. Yeah, I'll never forget, the last band that I was in, the first release that we put out, getting a call from Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top, and him just raving about the record, and man, how did you guys record this? What guitars did you use? What amplifiers did you use? And so that, man, growing up as a kid, having posters of him and his band on my wall, and then you put out your first release in your early 20s and you get that kind of call. It's amazing. It's encouraging. It makes you want to keep going on and keep going forward. And, even since I've been playing in Blackstone Cherry, the bass player for Creed has came and saw the band a couple of times whenever we play at Club LA in Destin, Florida, because he lives kind of in that area. And then I'll never forget going to an Alter Bridge show in Louisville, Kentucky about 2 or 3 years ago. And we got to say hello to the guys after the show. Seven Dust was on the bill, and got to hang out with those guys. That was super cool. But I'll never forget, him coming up to me and saying, "Hey man, I haven't really got to meet you yet since you've been in the band, but saw you a couple times since you've been in the band, and I really enjoy, your playing. You're doing a good job. So to get." a thumbs up like that and a pat on the back, if you will, from Creed and Alter Bridge's bassist. That was super cool, man, and very encouraging.
Black Stone Cherry has had a very stable core since 2001. How was joining a brotherhood and find your place without losing your personality?
That's a great question because I think anybody in my shoes, you know, well, first, fortunately, I've been very fortunate, to know the guys for what feels like my whole life at this point, because I literally live in the same area. We shop at the same department stores and same grocery stores and restaurants, if you will. So, you know, um, but at the same time, you can be a little nervous, I guess, trying to find your place and, um, want to honor and respect what's there and what fans kind of anticipate when they hear Blackstone Cherry music, either live or on the album. But you also want to be yourself too. And I've my entire life I've been unapologetically myself, and that if there's one thing that you can count on from me, it's me being 100% myself. So that definitely helps when you join someone else's band that you've known for years, and they like you for who you are and how you play. So it's been great. They've been very accepting.
Steve Jewell, thank you very much. Next time you come to Madrid, please go out and we grab a beer.
Sounds great, man. Thank you, Tony, for having me.